Hello, everyone. I'm Professor Geek. Welcome back to the channel. I wanted to talk a little bit about Graham Nolan's Monster Island and Return to Monster Island. Now, if you've been around my channel for a long time, maybe you'll remember years ago, I actually did a review of wonderful Monster Island. This is coming about again because he's released a new campaign on Indiegogo as a part of his Compass Comics continuity now. I don't know all of the history of it, but I think Compass Comics was his property or whatever thing back in the day, his publishing imprint back in the day, where he published some of these things and he took them elsewhere or something. I don't know, but now he's bringing it back and he's bringing all of his properties together to try to create a shared universe, a comic book universe, and all these characters sharing the same continuity that they can cross over and whatnot. I think that's going to start happening a little bit with the coming Ghosts of Matacumbe Key. Still waiting on my copy of that. I'm excited to read and review that. But I've been reviewing the Joe Frankensteins. Love those. I'll link to those videos. And I'll also link to the review I did of Monster Island. This was years ago when he released it on a Kickstarter through Ominous Press. And I was able to receive this wonderful, wonderful collector's edition hard copy. It's photographs of his original art pages. I think I have, 174 of 300 that were only ever published. They're signed by him. I'm super proud of this, super bragging on it, just kind of flexing a little bit here. But I'll put the review of that if you want a review of that story in general. I was reviewing that back in the day because he was about to announce a Ominous Press release of Return to Monster Island, which I also got in a nice hardcover. Now these aren't available in these printings anymore, these hardcovers, but they are released now under Compass Comics imprint, which is a really cool thing. They've got some new covers and whatnot. It's worth grabbing those, especially if you've never read them. These are very much worth having in your collection. And I never did end up getting to do the review specifically of Return to Monster Island. So now that I'm doing more review / analyses with these videos and whatnot, I thought it was good to revisit this and talk about Return to the Monster Island 2 and talk about how these stories work together and what's great about them, because I do think they're great and I think they're worth picking up. First, I'll go ahead and I'll place chapters in the video here for you, but I'll go ahead and put in my review of Monster Island so many years ago. I've got the camera focused on the book so you can see the nice art and everything like that. So I'll put that there for you. I'll edit it down and then we'll come back and talk about Return to Monster Island and both books together. He offered this big edition here because it really does, this is the size of the sheets, that they would draw on. So it really does look like you've got his original art here in front of you. I mean, that's so cool. It's massive. It's hard for me to get everything on screen at once, but Graham Nolan, I mean, his art's just amazing. So that's the first, wonderful part of this book. You've got Graham Nolan's just epic art, really great stuff. They get stranded on this island, their plane goes down, and it's a monster island. All these types of creatures, show up on this island. They don't really know what's going on. There's a mystery to it. You have to find that out yourself as you go through. So I'll let you, I won't spoil any of that for you. I'll let people, read that on their own. But he said in the introduction that he really wanted to go back to a day when the comics were for all ages, basically. And, he reminds me of Darwin Cook, honestly, and that with that philosophy, and even their art styles, you can tell some similarities. But Graham Nolan's great here. Now, all ages, yeah. I mean, I don't know. I mean, all ages, and some parents might not necessarily want their child reading something like that. But still, it's not like epic or graphic or anything like that, But it's just a great story. It really harkens back to just a good old-fashioned fun entertainment as it's supposed to be, and it's a well-told story. There are some great themes. Again, I don't want to spoil what's really going on the island for you, but it's really it's quite inventive, and it really is a neat concept that he's thought up here. It definitely is influenced by some of the great old B movies, monster movies, and sci-fi flicks and stuff like that from the ages of before. But there's nothing There's nothing just derivative. It really is an original conception and combination of all those ideas. So I won't show you too much there to spoil it, but that's really great. I love the story there. It's solid. I'll say as well that just in terms of we talked about how wonderful the art is, but in terms of the writing, as I said, he does pull from a few influences with the story and the plot and what's really going on the island, but it does keep you guessing. You don't, even if you think you know what's going on, it kind of pulls
pulls a twist on you, and that's good. You know, it's fun for the reader. Also, the relationship between Duke and Mac, the sparks that fly between them and whatnot, and what happens between them. It's really well done. It really is some good psychological realism between the two of them in terms of storytelling, and I'm very happy with that. They're two fun characters to spend time with, and to have them spend time together. You know, watching that happen, that's really great.
These stories really are so much fun. And he said that he's trying to bring back the fun to comic books. He's trying to make comic books more all ages and really bring back the fun. And he's achieved that quite nicely. And I thought I'd talk about some of the reasons this story really does that. It's not just the treatment of the characters. It's not just, what he decides to put in and what he decides it doesn't. It starts with the very genres he's building this story on. So Monster Island. We have a number of different genres all mixed up in this as in one. One of them is the travel, the adventure narrative. Think about back to works like the Odyssey, Odysseus going on his journey, visiting a bunch of different places, a sense of wonder, all these new places, going on an adventure that changes himself. I mean, to some extent, that's the basic hero's journey. But Gulliver's Travels, Jonathan Swift, a lot of people, if you don't know any better, you think that's just he visited the Lilliputians, the little people. He washed up on an island where he was a giant. That was just the very beginning of Gulliver's Travels. He visits the Brobdingnagians in floating cities, ends up with the Windham, a whole race of people that are horses, where human beings are more like cattle. So it's a wonderful journey, these kinds of stories where you go to different places. And that's a sense of wonder. It's a sense of going out of your comfort zone. Think about the Goonies, for example. It's our time down here. It takes you to a place where anything's possible. Now, this is not a journey to multiple places, the story, though. It's an island story. More than that, it's a shipwreck story. And that's a sense of immediate danger, immediate thrilling survival. You think back to Robinson Crusoe, Swiss Family Robinson, the Tempest, even stories like The Castaway, that Tom Hanks movie. The survival story, shipwrecked. Suddenly, you have to fend for yourself. There's a sense of real danger, but it's thrilling. There's tension, for the audience. But when you set it on one specific island, when you locate all of the adventure and the wonder of the journey, when you locate that all in one place, then you have a special new layer to the story where it's the island story. You think Treasure Island, Neverland, even think Neverland as being an island there. It's this one dedicated place in which all of this wonder is, different beings, different adventures are to be had there. It's not just one locale that's all the same. There are different things there, different dangers, different opportunities, and so forth. And that's really the fun of this island type story, is that you're transported to a place where the rules don't apply anymore. And that's dangerous, right? Because rules, to a certain extent, are some of the things that kept you safe in your everyday world. But restrictions don't apply anymore either. You can be something more in this new, different place that you're traveled to or been abandoned to or shipwrecked to or whatever. In Monster Island and in Return to Monster Island, we have a case of our two main characters, Duke and Mac, his co-pilot there, our navigation, I forget what she was called, officer. But they're shipwrecked quite literally with their plane. They're plane wrecked, if you want to say it like that. So it's a modern take on that. And this island, you find out very quickly in part one, I won't spoil it for you, but the nature of the island is such that there are a lot of different creatures from a lot of different places on the universe. It's not just like a prehistoric island that managed to survive, evolution or whatever with these different creatures there. No, it's an actual, there's something about this island, and there's different creatures and monsters, are races and beings there from all different types of places in the universe. And he really does pull inspiration from some of these best types of stories. I mean, you see inspiration from John Carter, Princess of Mars. You see inspiration from Hanna-Barbera, like I said. He said Toho. I'm not a big classic Toho guy, so I don't know. Again, it feels more to me like something from Harryhausen or Hanna-Barbera, as I said. But it's just great. The monsters are great. The adventure is great. And you do have that sense of this is a place where the rules and restrictions don't apply. And that's telling in the story, because in the story we have these two characters, Duke and Mac. And if you just opened up Monster Island, if you didn't see the covers or you didn't know, I mean, you'll know all of this just from looking at the campaign, but it's a man and a woman. But when you just start reading the story, you have this plane fly in and they're both in their helmets, and they're both talking, and their names are, she calls him Duke and he calls her Mac. Well, these are both names that, you think of as men. But then they wreck, and you find out, well, Duke's just a nickname because he loves John Wayne movies, and her name is Mac, is a shortening of her last name, that he calls her. And I think that's key because there ends up being a romance story between the two of them. Both of these stories are a romance story between the two of them. But starting out thinking that you've got this sort of buddy cop, chemistry there, buddy adventurers, and it's what it feels like. I mean, their chemistry very much is when you read those first few pages. I mean, when you read all the pages, but when you're still thinking that they could be both men, it makes sense. It's like, the search for El Dorado or whatever, it's that kind of buddy adventurer type dynamic between the two, which is interesting because it is a romance story, but it's a different kind of romance story. It's almost like one of the old great screwball comedies. It's like kind of like a His Girl Friday type romance between the two of them, which adds another really cool layer of genre to the story. It is a mixture of all of these things. It's not a typical kind of romancing the stone type adventure. And it's not done in a way in which, obviously, I mean, Graham Nolan's all about bringing back manliness to comics and letting femininity breathe on its own. And Mac is 100%. She's all woman, believe me. She can hold her own, and she's also a Air Force or Navy officer, but she's all woman. She's not trying to you treat me this way or that way. None of that nonsense. It just happens organically. It's just natural to the story. Remember how that used to be? It was great. The island too serves a purpose. This is easily a much bigger story. In fact, the way that the Return to Monster Island ends might tick you off a little bit, but it's a good solid arc. But there's more to come. Easily, there's more to come. You know that from this setup in this world that he's created here, and I can't wait to see how it fits together with some of the other stories and titles he's releasing. But I said it was a romance. In Mac and Duke's romance, the island, in these island type stories, that's a place for opportunity. The rules and stuff don't apply. So things can happen on the island that couldn't maybe necessarily have happened back in the real world because of the norms and the structures and the jobs or rules or whatever that you're forced to abide by. But on the island in the first book, that's where their romance blossoms. And you find, you can see hints of it, and, it's been kind of, the seeds were there all along or whatever. But given the opportunity in this new environment, this adventure environment, that's where it really blossoms. And this is maybe a minor spoiler, but it's important to the analysis of the books, is that in book 2, you find out that their romance in between going to Monster Island and the Return to Monster Island has fizzled, soured. Something happens. And you see that at the very beginning of book 2, so I'm not really spoiling anything. But going back to Monster Island is able to revisit that romance. I won't give away how or what happens or anything like that. And that's an interesting aspect of the hero's journey in general, but specifically these island type stories where there's a magical place, a dangerous, a mysterious, but a place of opportunity, a place of wonder that you have to revisit. In these types of stories where it's, visit to escape to or escape from and now return to and so forth. These are stories that really speak to the human experience, that every so often you in your human life, you have to step out of your norms. You just have to step out of your own rules and restricted existence. You have to think about things differently. Sometimes that means literally going someplace new or a vacation spot. Sometimes it means just, visiting a different headspace and or maybe different relationships or a different aspect to your personality. You as human beings, we do need to shake it up. And sometimes we shake it up in the same way over and over. If that source of shaking it up is a way to we can revisit it. I know I'm being very vague and nebulous here with these topics because, again, it can be any one nailed down thing depending on who you are and what your life is like. But it is part of the human experience. And he really taps into that with these books. And I'm not trying to go overly deep. It's a comic book. It's supposed to just be fun, adventure. It is all of that. I'm just trying to talk about why it strikes you as so fun, why it's so much adventure, because it does blend all of these great genres. It does treat the romance in a really cool way. And I've just talked about Duke and Max so far, but there are a lot of other characters that are really fascinating and fun to kind of follow along and see where they might be going in future runs or future editions of this. So I'm excited. I've been waiting for a few years now for more, and we're just re-releasing Monster Island, Return to Monster Island. Okay, Graham, now that you're back on your Compass Comics, it's time for more story. Let's keep this going, which I'm sure you will. But yeah, great book. I recommend picking it up on the Compass Comics imprint. I myself would love to get the new Compass Comics edition and titles and covers, but I don't know if I can bring myself or justify spending the money on that when I already spent so much money on these. And there's no news story involved in that, but it's some really sweet covers, and you get the addition of knowing that you've got the Compass comic imprint of these stories, and they're all going to be in one place going forward. So that's cool. Maybe if I can scrounge together the pennies, I might do that. But I definitely recommend you do it, especially if you haven't purchased these stories yet. If you've never read them or you don't have them on any other previous incarnation of them, pick it up. The campaign was just blasted off the first day, so it's not like it's in danger of not fulfilling by any means. Comes as Graham Nolan. This is not some indie creator unknown, but it's so it's going to happen. But it's really great. Get in on it if you can. And the Compass Comics imprint is just such a fun place to be right now. It's such a fun place to follow. The books are coming out with a good amount of regularity, and it's a new comic book universe. DC and Marvel are dead, and a lot of people are trying to start up their own, press or their own, universe and whatnot. But Compass Comics is something that comes into the game with a lot of credibility already, not platform-wise, but just as story-wise. I mean, Graham Nolan, his work, his ability and storytelling capability. Chuck Dixon, of course, is involved, with some of like the Joe Frankenstein and whatnot. There's some books that I've seen on their website that I don't have yet that I want to pick up. And it's just a fun place to be. You're in the ground floor and you see the universe coming together, especially with Ghosts of Matacumbe Key is supposed to, I think, piece together some of the parts a little bit better. So I'm excited about that. And I will certainly do a review analysis of that as well. So that's all I have to say about that. Definitely pick it up. I'll have the link in the description below and links to the other videos I mentioned or whatever up there. So you can check those out. Chapters below if you want to revisit any portion. But until next time, keep enjoying and digging deeper into the true blue hero stories you love. Thanks for watching.